Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are watching your operational briefing for April 4th, 2026, and the date is fitting, because what happened on the front today is no joke. 10 confirmed advance sectors in a single day. 29 square kilometers taken. 0 Ukrainian advances. The best single day of March arrived on its very last hours. The headline is Sumy. Russian forces have breached the second defensive line of Sumy Oblast and are now 15 kilometers from the city. The Sumy forest massif is within reach, and spring foliage is coming. We will explain why that combination matters more than any single map correction. Kupiansk, Constantinovka, the Kharkiv sector, Zaporizhzhia, the Sloviansk direction, all moving simultaneously. And in the Middle East, Trump has effectively announced a retreat without achieving a single declared objective. Let us get into it. April 1st, 2026 records what by cumulative results was the most productive 24 hours of the entire month of March. 10 confirmed advance sectors across multiple directions, approximately 29 square kilometers of territory taken, and not a single confirmed Ukrainian advance. The picture is unfolding simultaneously in the north, center, and east of the theater, which is itself an operationally significant fact. Distributed pressure across a broad front makes it extremely difficult for the Ukrainian side to concentrate reserves on any single direction. Before moving to the front line, the key diplomatic signal of the day must be recorded. Trump has stated that the war in Iran will continue for another 2 to 3 weeks, after which the United States will simply leave, without any deal, without achieving any stated objectives. This is effectively an official acknowledgement of campaign failure. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. Iran has not abandoned its nuclear program, its ballistic missile production, or its drone development. The regime has not changed. The only measurable outcome of American military presence in the region is that Iran has acquired a new revenue stream from transit fees through the strait. Those who need oil through Hormuz, in Trump's formulation, can deal with it themselves. This is not a diplomatic exit. It is an acknowledgement of the impossibility of achieving stated objectives. On the Sumy direction, the past 24 hours produced 2 separate but interconnected advances that form a qualitatively new operational picture in the northern theater. The first is the capture of Mala Korchakovka. The northern grouping advanced southward from Alexeyevka by nearly 3 kilometers and established control over the settlement. This has been confirmed by both the northern grouping command and the Russian Ministry of Defense. The operational significance of this event goes far beyond a single settlement. Mala Korchakovka is a component of the penultimate and most heavily fortified defensive line protecting Sumy from the north, running through the villages of Koten and Krapivshchina. This line was constructed in 2024. It has now been breached. From current Russian positions to Sumy city is approximately 15 kilometers. Russian forces have not been this close to the oblast capital since the first weeks of the war. The significance of this advance is amplified by the seasonal factor. Spring means the appearance of foliage in the forest massifs, and this is precisely where the large Sumy forest begins. Forest terrain provides concealed movement, protection from FPV operators, and the ability for deep maneuver. Entry into the forest massif represents a transition to an operational environment where a consolidated adversary is extremely difficult to dislodge. Once the foliage appears, advancing towards Sumy along forest corridors will become considerably easier. The second advance is a new entry point into Sumy Oblast slightly north of the Komarivka bridgehead, along the E391 highway in the area of the road border crossing. Maximum penetration depth is 2.5 kilometers. The overall width of the Sumy Oblast bridgehead has stretched to 15 kilometers and continues expanding toward 20 to 25. In Kondratovka, advances are recorded in the residential built-up area in both the northern and southern parts of the settlement. Final clearance of the village is expected in April. On the Krasnopilia direction, Russian forces have begun movement toward Ryazan from the south, an advance of 1.5 kilometers. Given that movement toward the village is also underway from the east, fighting directly inside the settlement should be expected in April. Activity is also being recorded in the Novodnitrivka area. Additional advances are anticipated. On the Kharkiv direction, Footage from Sopich documents Russian assault groups in the residential built-up area of the settlement under enemy fire. Zone of control expansion toward Kharkiv continues without large single-step changes. On the Kharkiv direction, several advances were recorded over the past 24 hours. The most significant is Verkhnya Pisarivka. The Russian Ministry of Defense officially confirmed the passage of the settlement under full Russian control. The northern grouping advanced 2 kilometers along the Siversky Donets and entered the village with full consolidation inside, not merely clinging to the outskirts. With the appearance of foliage, the prospects on this sector become considerably broader given the dense forest massifs in this area. On the Malovsky bridgehead, Russian forces advanced 2.5 kilometers toward Katne, clearing 2 forest tracts. This creates a threat to Amban from the north. The capture of this settlement in April or May appears realistic. In the Otradne and Zaporizhzhia area, zone of control expansion was recorded across a front over 8 kilometers wide. Advanced depth varies from 300 meters to 1.8 kilometers, but the key point is that Russian forces are progressively reaching the line of adjacent villages. Toward Kolodezne, Russian forces have advanced 1.5 kilometers. Approximately 800 meters now separate them from the first houses of the settlement. Prospects on this sector for April and May are assessed as favorable. On the Vovchansk direction, zone of control expansion was recorded east of Zelin, advance width 2.5 kilometers. The Russian Ministry of Defense also confirmed the capture of Verkhnya Pisarivka in the Vovchansk sector context. Expansion continues in Semenivka and Haravska. Vovchansky Khutori remains under Ukrainian control. North of Bakhkov, a new entry point into Kharkiv Oblast has been recorded. Russian forces consolidated on a 3-kilometer sector in the forest massif. The operational logic, control over the forest massif, makes the adjacent settlements that sit alongside it effectively impossible for Ukrainian forces to hold, as a force consolidated in the forest can emerge against their flanks at any moment. On the Lipsy sector, fighting on the approaches to Vesely continues without map updates. Positions are deliberately not being disclosed for operational security reasons. On the Kupiansk direction, confirmed changes have been recorded directly inside the city. Over the past 24 hours, video materials were received from 3 separate points in the northern part of Kupiansk, documenting Russian unit presence in residential buildings, in the private housing sector on the approaches to the railway station, and in the ruins of a multi-story building near the city hospital. On the basis of these materials, the entire northern part of the city is marked as being under Russian control. Zone of control expansion has also been confirmed on 2 additional sectors. In parallel, reports are arriving of active combat operations in the vicinity of Kucherivka, in the southern part of the city, and in the Kupiansk-Vuzlovyi area. The status of Kovsharivka, Novusinov, and Hlushkivka remains ambiguous. Incoming data is contradictory, and no confirmed video materials exist for these objects. If reports of Kovsharivka and Novusinov being taken are confirmed, this would mean Russian control established over virtually the entire line along the Oskil River on this sector. Hlushkivka would be the only remaining Ukrainian strongpoint in the sector. Reports also arrived of significant casualties among workers brought in to install anti-drone netting in the city. The group was struck by Russian artillery. This confirms active Russian fire reconnaissance operating within the city boundary. On the Zaporizhzhia direction, the western flank remains the most dynamic on the entire theatre, though the character of changes here differs substantially from other directions. The Russian Ministry of Defense confirmed the passage of Boykivka under full Russian control. Notably, no preliminary reports of movement toward this settlement had been received. It passed under control without the usual informational prelude. This is a characteristic pattern on this sector. Several settlements in this area have changed hands in precisely this manner. A similar scenario for Voskresenivka, Verkhnya Tersa, and Huliapilske cannot be excluded. On the Orikhiv direction, the situation remains effectively deadlocked for both sides. Ukrainian forces continue attempts to restore control over Primorske and press towards Stepnohirsk. Russian forces are responding with FPV drone strikes against Ukrainian positions in both settlements. Magdalenivka, Novoyakivlivka and Zapasne are assessed as being under Russian control based on most recent data, though current verification is absent. In Kharkiv itself, Russian FPV drones are actively working against the southern part of the city. No confirmed advance. On the Dobropilya direction, a confirmed advance northeast of Hryshyn has been recorded, 1.5 kilometers in the northward direction. Russian units reached new positions and came under Ukrainian fire, which simultaneously confirms the fact of the advance. The systematic encirclement of the mine west of Rodinska continues. Russian positions are converging from both sides. The mine is effectively being taken in a pincer. If it has not already passed under control at the time of this briefing, it is a matter of hours. Once the mine is taken, the next pressure objective is Shevchenko. In Belitske, a number of pro-Russian sources report that over half of the settlement is under Russian control. Confirmed video materials are insufficient for map coloring. Corrections will be entered upon receipt of verifying data. Reports are also arriving of zone of control expansion in the areas of Novyi Donbass and Toretske. On the Konstantinovka direction, a video material has been received from the Ilyanivka area. Russian positions in agricultural structures on the southern boundary of the city, under Ukrainian fire. An advance of over 1 kilometer has been recorded. Russian forces continue expanding their zone of control in the industrial zone of the city center, specifically in the production structures of the Megatex industrial zone. The Ilyanivka situation requires clarification. According to available data, Russian units had advanced deeper into the settlement, but were subsequently compelled to pull back somewhat. Part of the territory returned to grey zone or Ukrainian control. Nevertheless, the overall dynamic remains unambiguous. Russian forces are methodically grinding through Ukrainian defenses. The Ukrainian side is transferring reserves, but the density of Russian FPV drones and the continuous activity of small assault groups are preventing stabilization. If Russian forces succeed in taking the industrial zone under full control, this creates a three-sided envelopment of the multi-story residential districts and makes the loss of the entire central part of the city practically inevitable. At the current tempo, Konstantinovka may pass under Russian control by early June. On the Sloviansk direction, confirming materials have been received for a number of sectors where advances were recorded in the preceding days. The entire territory in the vicinity of Lipivka has passed under Russian control. Russian units continue expanding their zone of control in the forest massifs north of the settlement. The path to Rye-Oleksandrivka runs precisely through these massifs. If Russian forces take the forest between Lipivka and the city, where Ukrainian fortified lines are located, an advance to the outskirts of Rye-Oleksandrivka becomes only a matter of time. In the Kaliniki and Kriva Luka area, a 2.5 kilometer zone of control expansion has been recorded. Russian forces have straightened the front line between the two settlements. In the Novomayakov area, expansion continues both northward and northwestward along the Siversky Donets-Donbass Canal. In the Minkivka area, southward expansion continues. The western part of the settlement remains in grey zone. Regarding Rye-Oleksandrivka, data on Russian force presence on the outskirts continues to accumulate, but verifying materials for cartographic notation remain insufficient. The situation continues to develop. April 1, 2026 records a qualitative acceleration in the tempo of Russian advances distributed across the full width of the theatre. 10 advanced sectors in 24 hours, 29 square kilometers. This is not a random spike. It is the result of several operational efforts simultaneously maturing after accumulating throughout March. Mala Korchakovka opens the forest corridor toward Sumy. Verkhnya Pisarivka consolidates positions along the Siversky Donets. Kupiansk is documentarily confirmed as a zone of active Russian urban counteroffensive. Konstantinovka and Lyman are moving toward resolution. Boykivka passed under control without warning, following the same scheme by which other settlements in this area have changed hands. For the Ukrainian side, the northern situation is becoming the most acute. The breach of the second defensive line of Sumy Oblast and the approach to the forest massifs does not represent an immediate threat to the city, but it establishes the conditions under which that threat will grow exponentially as foliage appears. April has begun exactly as March ended. under the sign of mounting pressure across the entire front. Briefing compiled as of April 1st, 2026. A number of data points regarding Kovsharivka, Novusinov, Rai Oleksandrivka, and Belitske require verification as confirming materials continue to come in.